In Christianity, there's a sense of having something firm to stand on, like singing hymns about a strong foundation. But with the influence of modern science, that firm ground starts to vanish or seems less believable. It's like going from solid ground to swimming or sinking in the vastness of relativity. Living in a world where everything is relative means there's nothing solid to hold on to. It's like being in water, you have to learn to swim without constantly grabbing onto things. That's what Buddhism is about when it talks about the art of letting go and non-attachment. It doesn't mean giving up your enjoyment of dinner, it's about not clinging too tightly to things in life. It's like learning to swim by relaxing and not constantly holding on to things around you. Non-attachment in Buddhism is like not grabbing onto things too tightly. It's about finding a middle ground, not too tight and not too loose, like adjusting a wheel's axle so it doesn't stick. When people are told to relax, they sometimes become like a floppy rag, but true relaxation is finding a still tone, a balanced middle way. Imagine life as if you were kicked off a precipice when you were born, and there's nothing to stop you from falling. You might grab onto rocks or trees for a sense of safety, but deep down, everything is falling apart and constantly changing. Buddhism says when you accept this reality and stop trying to cling to things for safety, you find peace. It's like realizing there's nothing to be afraid of when you fully accept that everything is in a constant state of change. When you've let go of everything and aren't afraid anymore, it's a profound state. Some people in religion hold on to suffering because they feel right when they're in pain. They might even say, "I thank the Lord for my troubles because it keeps my faith alive." But Buddhism sees through this as an illusion. Even suffering or extreme measures like suicide don't provide real security. In Buddhism, there's no ultimate security. You have to face the reality that everything is always changing. The challenge is how to help people understand this truth. You can't force it on them, it's not something you can push down their throats. Buddhism recognizes that convincing someone to let go is a personal choice. So, it involves a unique relationship between the one asking questions and the one answering, the student and the teacher. It's not about converting people forcefully, it's about a shared journey of understanding. Let's break it down. Buddhism first arrived in China around 60 AD, but it didn't make a big impact. It wasn't until about 400 AD, when a Sanskrit scholar named Kumar Ajiva came along. He taught Chinese scholars Sanskrit and worked with them to translate Buddhist scriptures into Chinese. Translating all the Buddhist scriptures was a massive task, as they were as large as, if not a bit more than, the Encyclopedia Britannica. The interesting thing happened during translation. Chinese scholars had to find equivalent words in Chinese for Sanskrit ideas. They often turned to Taoist philosophy to find these equivalents. This led to a blending of Indian and Chinese attitudes because the Chinese interpreted the translations through a Taoist lens, altering the original meanings a bit. One significant change was the introduction of humor. Indian Buddhism usually lacked humor, but Chinese culture is rich in it. The Chinese philosophers, especially Zhuangzi, brought a humorous touch to their teachings, making Chinese Buddhism uniquely blended with a sense of humor. There's a book called The Wisdom of Lao Jia published by Random House, translated by Linu Tang. It's fascinating because it not only includes translations of Lao Jia, but also substantial sections of Zhuangzi, adding a humorous touch. Indian Buddhism, in general, lacks humor, but this blend is unique. Now, Indian Buddhism had a strong tie to celibacy, which the Chinese found hard to grasp. Chinese culture revolves more around family, and celibacy seemed pointless to them. When Buddhism reached China, it still had elements of celibacy, but the reasons were different. The Chinese view on celibacy wasn't about sex being bad, rather, it was seen as convenient not to have a spouse. The idea of an uninvolved life appealed to them, but they never bought into the notion that sexual desire was inherently bad, a belief more prevalent in Hindu thinking, although without the Western sense of guilt but rather as something that dissipates spiritual energies. In yoga, there's this idea of Kundalini, a psychic energy like a serpent at the base of the spine. The goal is to move it up to the head by withdrawing from its manifestation in sexuality. This is done to elevate the energy to a higher level. Chinese approach differs. They don't see sexual energy as a dissipation, instead, they aim to live a Buddhist life while staying active in the world. They want to be like a king on the outside, managing practical affairs in everyday life, and a sage on the inside, staying awake. It's about being fully involved in the world but also having an inner, secluded, and serene space, like living on top of a mountain, cloud hidden and whereabouts unknown.